Us versus them. Who is us and who is them? This has been banging around for a little while. I've had these two boards written up over a month ago. They've gone back and forth up north and back with me because I just haven't gotten around to doing this. I had kind of incomplete thoughts about this whole issue. I was going to go a totally different way on this STO versus STS. And not simple saying, no, it's not as simple as STO versus STS. Which means service to other versus service to self. Basically good and evil in Ra speak. And Ra always speaks of STS, service to self people, as somehow it ties it with Orion a lot. As being the negative, it's their equivalent of Satan is Orion. So they've got the whole Ra speak, that's STO and STS comes out of Ra, pretty much. And this thought must be in the, it must be something out there saying, wanting the message. It's not STO versus STS. Something wanted that message to come out. Because while I pocket vetoed this whole thing for about a month, a couple weeks ago, another YouTuber, someone I subscribed to, did exactly the subject, STO versus STS, and that it's not a matter of STO versus STS. But he went a more positive way with it, which is kind of surprising because he's usually kind of a conservative, Republicanish, pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of guy, tough love type speaker. He usually takes kind of a negative on a lot of things. But he took the positive road on this whole subject. He talked about Rumi, and Rumi had a poem where he said, beyond good and evil and right and wrong. I forget the exact verbiage. He recited it very nicely. I might put a link in the description of his video. Anyway, I think beyond good and evil, there's a field. I'll meet you back there, or something like that. A field of beyond the good and evil, beyond service to self, beyond service to others. Because, if you look at the theory of one, if you understand the whole thing of one, it's kind of silly anyway. I was also thinking on this board, this is actually an even older board sitting around, and it's a related subject. Just all the different divisions people put themselves into, and they've got an oversoul they're somehow not connected with. They've got a group soul that they sprouted out of. They got a soul, they got a real mind, they got a false mind, they got an inner child, they got a little self. All kinds of nice little terms and divisions. And then if you go into Ra, there's probably at least a half dozen others. I listened to Mandelker the other day, and he went through a whole list of them. And then Tom Campbell's got his own little list. He's got all these, he likes to do the STO. He doesn't use STO and STS, but he likes to use acronyms, and stuff. And kind of his own argot, and on his take on. And I must say, Tom Campbell, I love it, and I really like what he says. Although, if you just go through his stuff, you're going to get the introduction stuff over and over again. If you read all of his videos, you're going to keep getting the intro material over and over again. It's kind of hard to ferret out the more advanced material out of his stuff. At any rate, I like him, but he's got his own kind of argot of using, what does he call individual humans, individual consciousness units, ICUs or whatever. He's got all these 3-letter and 4-letter things, so he's got his own kind of speak. You've got Ra speak on one hand, you've got the big toe speak on the other hand, and you can make this list cover this whole page of different divisions of, what kind of self you are, what part of the self you are. And I'm always saying about frameworks and, what's the word I'm looking for, framework systems. In order to look at something, it's useful, but don't get tied up on structures like that. Try to see the whole, not just the structures. Anyway, my negative-ish take that I didn't do, because it was kind of negative, as I was talking about, the polarity in this country, the political polarity especially, and how I've known people in the spiritual path who are deeply conservative, Rush Limbaugh conservatives. It kind of amazes me. You'd think that that's service to self, They don't see it that way. And I know a lot of the hardcore conservatives probably see, liberals see themselves as service to others. They obviously want to help everybody. I'm sure the conservatives want to call them service to self, twisted thing, trying to get themselves elected or something. Anyway, I don't want to get deep into the political thing, but it's just so amazing how people from the left and right can look at each other and demonize each other and glorify themselves. And I think what's really happening, mostly to the right, but probably to both circles to a degree, is that who's your tribe? Who is us and who is them? And for a lot of people, the thems are the sapsuckers, the low. They got everybody hitting the low end of the spectrum, versus the other party, the other side hates the high end of the spectrum. One's trying to help the low class, the other one is blaming the low class, and conversely with the high class, it's just such a warp of perspective. So a lot of people think they're doing service to others, but the others they're including is not the thems. It's just the others. It's just the selves. It's just us. It's not the thems. It says us and them. And, it's the good Americans. It's the nice, dare I say, the nice white, proper middle-class Americans versus all those horrible lower-class people and evil immigrants and stuff, all just trying to ruin my way of life, and upset my apple cart and ruin everything for me. So they've got a tribe, and the tribe excludes those other races, those immigrants, and it excludes the very poor, the people the people they think of as sapsuckers and snowflakes, etc. And hopefully, a more liberal view has a bigger tribe. They want to include the low end. They want to keep the ladder. So the low end can make it up to the middle class. But they don't really look at the upper class as part of their tribe. And the conservatives do. They aspire to be the upper class. They aspire to be the millionaire. I'm going to be a millionaire in a few years. I don't want any laws against millionaires, anything that will tax the millionaires, because I'm going to be there someday. Which is, admirable way to think about things. It doesn't really happen for that many people if you look at the statistics. Anyway, I don't want to get negative about the political situation. It's polarized enough without me wading in, and this is a channel I don't really want to be polarized about. So forgive me, you conservatives. I would like to know how I don't know if you can put it gently and constructive enough. There's another video I'd like to link from a more or less liberal guy from Big Think. It was like two months ago maybe. I'll see if I can find it. But it was very constructive on looking at the right from a left, point of view, and seeing how how it's logical, how it's no more illogical for them. And it was a good video because it showed how conservatives look at the liberals and liberals look at the conservatives to a degree, and how the different mindsets aren't totally about service to self, He didn't use those words. How in both senses, both parties see themselves as being altruistic to a degree, just different goals. So it's not STO versus STS, service to others versus service to self. It's really service to others, service to tribe, service to self. So the people who only care about themselves, me, people who care about the bigger friends, family, service to tribe, us. And then there's the people who are more open-minded, more positive, hopefully, and they want to help the others, service to others, them. There is no them. Everybody's part of their other, ideally. And of course, anything can be overdone. Someone who's totally, you can be altruistic to a fault and not see to your own good, and die off. It's kind of, I'm kind of wandering here, but it's kind of like what happened with certain religions that talked against having sex and stuff, and ended up not kind of breeding themselves out of existence. Another interesting us versus them I heard recently on YouTube, and I'll also try to find this and link it. Might have been another big think, I don't know. But it was two materialists from the skeptical community talking together. So obviously it was kind of a materialistic type conversation. The one guy was pretty enlightened. The one guy was making light of how the other had discussions with Deepak Chopra, and of course Deepak Chopra is someone who's received a lot of hate. Some of it might be deserved, from his own careless statements, but I kind of like Deepak. I think a lot of the hate is misplaced against him. At any rate, I don't want to get into defending Deepak. We're not. But the way the one guy explained it was really great, and I'll try to link that if I can. But he was basically saying, well, Deepak looks at this from a spiritual viewpoint. I forget the word he used, is what I'm struggling with here. I don't know if he said spiritual or something else. I'll use that word for now. Deepak looks at it from a spiritual point, looks down onto the physical from that point. Whereas we're looking from the material point of view, from the physical point of view. And he said it almost like, that makes sense. That's the proper way to do it. Whereas to someone who's kind of in the mystical path, just hearing that, the materialistic point of view is the proper point of view, just kind of grates, Anyway, that's another way of two different people looking at the same thing from two different perspectives and not communicating. That's why I like to talk a lot about syntonics. The ability to see, the ability to adapt to other people's perspectives, to see other people's perspectives, the ability to be the chameleon for a moment and accept someone else's words with the intent that they were issued, I said before once, kind of I threw out a comment where I believe everything, Obviously I don't, but I try to believe everything everybody says. I try to understand from what perspective they're saying it. And of course some people are just plain dishonest. But that aside, most people are saying something for a reason, and they're saying it from their own perspective. And I try to see their perspectives, try to get their real meaning, and not just try to pick apart their words, and say, oh, he said this and that. And I try to see what they meant, not what they said, to put it in another sense. So mainly what I want to say is, don't mistake the models for the reality. Don't get obsessed with models. Use them and throw them away when they no longer fit your circumstance. You have to be real careful with models, not to make them real, not to make the false real, not to make the model of reality the reality itself. Kind of a forest for the trees type thing. I need a better analogy here.